amazingly silent in here.
Yes.
Hi, Ian.
Hello, all. So it is 7 o'clock, and I guess we should get our meeting started. Could all of those, just because we've got a lot of people on, could I ask everybody that is on the call to mute their microphones unless they're planning to speak, so that we don't get any background noise and those sorts of things. If we could call this meeting to order. Everybody in attendance should be aware that this meeting is being recorded, and that landowner questions will be taken at the end of the meeting after the completion of the formal agenda. I'd like to start with just some welcome and introduction. So first off, welcome to all members of the public and the landowners that have joined us for this meeting. Secondly, just want to make sure that everybody's been introduced properly. That first, the Board of Trustees, that there are myself, Ian Monroe, the chair, Trustee Susanna Calger, and Trustee Eve Goudreau. As well, we have outgoing Trustee Ted Haroldson, and I say it that way because of unfortunate timing. Ted's term ended on the 22nd when our AGM was originally scheduled for, and such. He will be here tonight to participate in the meeting and contribute to the discussions. But because of timing, any votes, Ted won't vote in those votes. Also on the call is Gary Nason, who is our interim administrator, Janice Swanson, who is our deputy administrator, Dan McGill, our public works superintendent, Ian Ham, our fire chief, and Graham Roberts, who is with Myers Norris Penny. He is our auditor and is here to present the annual financial statements as part of this agenda. I'd also like to extend a welcome to Daniel Arbor, who has joined the call tonight. Daniel, for those of you who don't know, is with CBRD. He's the CBRD Director for Electoral Area A. So, did I miss anybody? I don't think so. So that would be it. So this then we begin the formal part of the agenda, and at the first step in the agenda, or the first item on the agenda, is the approval of this agenda and the addition of any late items. So we've got some additional sort of microphones open. If you're on the call and you are not muted, please mute your microphone. Over to the trustees, any late additions, any other items, any changes to the agenda? We have one item that Gary had brought forward earlier on that is not shown on the formal agenda, and that is the approval of the minutes from the last AGM. So I would propose that become oh, sorry, it is now on the agenda, the new agenda, so we'll put it in there. Any other thoughts? Okay, so motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Seconder.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so then we are now on to approving the minutes of the annual general meeting held on June. No, actually, sorry, I'm sorry. We're on to approving the minutes for last year's meeting, which was held on September 10th, 2020. was held approximately 6 months, or I guess 5 months later than normal because of the pandemic. So for the trustees that have those minutes, is there any adds, changes, deletes, questions?
No.
I guess my only question would be, as a point of protocol, was that the 2020 annual general meeting or the 2019? My understanding would be 2019 because we're approving the 2019 financial statements. And it currently shows as the 2020, so perhaps we should correct that to say 2019 annual general meeting minutes. Okay, so
Right.
no other changes?
Yeah. No.
All right, so then motion to adopt the 2019 annual general meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now we are on to reports. And the first report up happens to be me, which is the chair's report for 2020. And in order to make sure I get this right, I'm going to read from my report. I may pause at times to add some additional commentary, but it was a pretty special year. So 2020 has been an incredibly eventful and historic year for our improvement district. In fact, there were so many major events that it is difficult to do justice to the year in a summary report such as this. Overarching this very active year was the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused significant challenges for our operations, with our offices being closed to the public, new protocols for how our staff perform work, new vehicle purchases to allow for social distancing, and new ways of conducting board meetings, public events, etc. Through this backdrop, however, our UBID team shone through and achieved these significant milestones during the year. First, in my report last year, I stated the most important project for the immediate future of Union Bay was the construction of the new water treatment plant. That plant was commissioned in 2020, and the resulting water quality from this new plant is something for us to be proud of as a community. Turbidity readings are now below 0.1 NTUs, where the old plant often had difficulty producing water below 1.0 NTUs, prompting boil water notices. Provided our plant continues to function as designed, boil water notices should be behind us. I would like to offer my thanks and congratulations to our public works and administration teams for all the great work they did to make this success a reality. The total cost of this plant is approximately $5.3 million and has been funded by allocating $700,000 of reserves and placing a $3.5 million loan, and the rest funded from operational surplus. Second, last year's report also identified the governance study regarding conversion to CVRD services as the most important project for the long-term future of Union Bay. In 2020, CVRD engaged Urban Systems to conduct the governance study, which resulted in a report being presented to the board and ultimately to the landowners of UBID, providing a comparison of the options of converting to CVRD or remaining as an improvement district. Following the presentation of the report and an open house, I might add, a referendum was scheduled and held in November, where landowners voted in favor of converting UBID to CVRD delivered services. Work began almost immediately to develop and execute a work plan to ensure a smooth transition. Work is progressing according to this plan with significant involvement of both CVRD and Union Bay staff, and is expected to be fully complete by the conversion date of July 1st, 2021. In addition, the UBID board continues to pursue several strategic priorities designed to best position UBID for this transition, including a review of our subdivision bylaw to ensure that our needs are covered given significant developments anticipated in Union Bay, providing office facilities for our public works staff at the water treatment plant, and inventorying B parcels and reviewing our ability to add these properties to our parcel tax roll at a rate greater than 0. beginning a 5-year capital plan for UBID services with a focus on water services. Thirdly, during 2020, we experienced a significant degree of change with respect to our administration leadership. On July 1st, our CAO, Gord Mason, retired from his position, and our Deputy Administrator, Janice Swanson, agreed to step in as acting administrator until the results of the referendum was known. We also engaged Gary Nason as a consultant to support Janice. When the results of the referendum became known and the work plan for conversion was better understood, we engaged Gary more significantly as interim administrator, allowing Janice to focus on her financial portfolio. Gary's experience in local government has been instrumental in establishing working relationships with CBRD to guide us through conversion. We appreciate the flexibility all have shown in working through this unique year. I'm going to pause there for a second for my report and emphasize this a little bit. I can't tell you how great it has been to have Gary's professional guidance and experience with us through these very, very interesting times and these very complex processes that we've been going through. And I would further like to thank Janice for stepping forward in the second half of 2020. Excuse me. Janice, without you, we couldn't have got to where we're at. And with Gary, same thing for you. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. Excuse me again. A final, excuse me, one second. One final note from a staffing perspective is that in 2020, a collective bargaining agreement was also entered into with QP5. I'll go on mute for a second. I promise you this is nothing unhealthy. So also in 2020, a collective bargaining agreement was entered into with QP 566, finalizing the unionization of UBID's public works and administrative staff. The last item on my report from the perspective of significant events was that the new water treatment plant introduced significant changes to our cost and financing structures, requiring an extensive budget review and changes to tolls and taxes. The board worked to contain the increases required to support the increased complexity of our water system, and in the end approved a budget requiring a 20% increase in base water tolls. As our 2020 financial audit has been completed, we now know that we have a small deficit in our reserves because of this significant project, and a report on our options to address this deficiency has been commissioned and should be reported to the board in May of 2021. Further increases to taxes and or tolls may be required to maintain reserves which properly protect the future of our services. So that's kind of the working part of this report as to what was on front of mind for the board. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank board members who moved on during 2019 for their service to, sorry, that should say 2020, for their service to the community. Rick Bitton had his term expire in 2020, but not before agreeing to extending it to support UBID through the pandemic. And so Rick stayed on from when his term normally would have ended in April until the September board meeting. Ted Haraldson's term expired just last week, as I mentioned earlier. Ted served as chair of the board in 2018. Thanks also to John France, who served on the board for several months prior to his resignation. All of these people deserve our gratitude for stepping forward for our community and stewardship roles. I feel like I've not said enough about our staff as well. In that, you know, I've spoken of the leadership other than Chief Ham of the fire department. The fire department had an incredibly challenging year in that they continued to respond to emergency situations. Despite a pandemic going on, they were required to completely restructure their protocols in the fire hall and continue training and keeping up with their certifications. And our water treatment, all of our fire staff went through that, and our water treatment team continued to learn about our new plant and to work through the pains, and some of them were significant as we found warranty issues and those sorts of things. And then Lindsay Cameron, who held down the fort, really, right? Lindsay, with our office closed, was the one that was there and made sure that things kept running on a day-to-day basis within the walls of UBIT's offices. So I think I could represent all trustees in saying a big thank you to our entire team for everything they did during this year. Lastly, this will be the final annual general meeting in the history of the Union Bay Improvement District, as conversion to CBRD will occur on July 1st. The remaining trustees, Yves Goudreau, Susanna Calger, and myself, will form a reduced board for this period, as reflected in the provincial order in council, changing the number of trustees from 5 to 3 in order to avoid the cost and effort of an election if we were to have to go back to 5 trustees for the remaining 3 months of this until July 1st. This conversion comes with mixed emotion for our community, and I want to acknowledge that. While there was strong support for a conversion to CBRD, there was also a significant portion of our community that voted against it. So there are mixed emotions. I see this as a waypoint on our journey, that we've moved from improvement district to regional district. Conversion does not change what makes Union Bay great, which is our people, our location, our history, our natural beauty. Conversion also does not constrain our future. As Union Bay grows and evolves, the people of Union Bay can continue to explore new options, such as municipality status, when the time comes to consider new structures. So that concludes my report. Yes, the protocol would say, are there any questions, comments from the board with respect to that report? I would open it up to say, that given that this is a momentous meeting, that there may be some things that you might want to add from a personal perspective.
Well, thank you, Chair Monroe. I would like to thank you as a board member for guiding us through what really has been, you described it well, a momentous, historic, fraught with peril, and also, great achievements. And I truly, as a board member, the longest standing board member, really appreciate your guidance and your focus on process and transparency and accountability. I don't believe we would have been here today, Ian, without you. So thank you.
Thank you. Yves, any comments to add to this?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. And Ted, anything you would like to add?
Yes. Ian, I thank you very much for you stepping in and being chair for this last round of the Union Bay Improvement District. 57 years, and many boards, many chairmen, and many trustees. They all need to be thanked for bringing this along all these years. And what can I say? I think it was a job well done. There's ups and downs in any kind of governance, and Union Bay, as they say, is moving forward.
Thank you, Ted. So if there's no further comments or questions with respect to my report, I'd like to move on to the interim administrator, Gary Nason's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks very much. And it's my pleasure to present this report to the annual general meeting of the Union Bay Improvement District. I've taken a little bit of a different slant on this report, given the fact of where we're at in the conversion process, and the fact that the board has a number of strategic priorities on the plate, which you mentioned in your report. So my principal focus of this report given the platform that we're at, and hopefully members of the public that have joined in and are interested, is really to focus on two central themes: where we're at in the conversion process as we speak, and also to give the board and the public an update on where we're at with some of your strategic priorities, which you referred to. The first section of my report really deals with the conversion process. As I think everyone knows, we're heading towards conversion to the CVRD. Basically, in April, we finally were forwarded copies of 2 orders in council from the provincial government, basically to affect the UBID CVRD conversion process. And the first order in council converts the services of UBID to the services of the CRD, and essentially transfers all rights, assets, liabilities, and obligations from UBID to the CVRD. The effective date of this OIC is July 1st of this year, so that's when conversion officially takes place. The second order in council amends our letters patent to change the required number of trustees from 5 to 3 to take us to that July 1st conversion date. The conversion process, as you know, is well underway and basically is occupying a fairly significant portion of the board as well as staff times. And to date, there have been 4 meetings of the overall, what I call the CVRD UBID conversion working group, which is overseeing the process. And the next meeting of this working group, which includes, as you know, trustee representation from UBID and a representative from the public. The next meeting will be held in May. Basically, the CVRD has set up 7 key functional areas to cover off all of the tasks and activities which have to be completed before July 1st to affect conversion. And what I presented in my report really is a short summary of the current status of each of those functional areas and some of the more recent noteworthy activities since my last report to the board. And I'm certainly prepared to answer any questions that members of the board or the public may have in terms of the conversion process. First functional area is communications, and planning is underway, and this is on the website for a UBID CVRD conversion online open house to be held on Thursday, May 18th between 4:30 and 5:30. Unfortunately, due to COVID, it has to be done virtually. First choice, of course, would have been an in-person open house, but unfortunately that's not an option. The purpose of the open house is really to afford UBID residents the opportunity to be briefed by CVRD and UBID elected officials and staff on the current status of the conversion process. The open house will also include a question and answer session. The event is being advertised via posters and social media. And again, the link is on the website, or the information is on the website. And information relating to the conversion process is also available on the CVRD and UBID websites. Pre-registration is required for the open house, and questions can be shared in advance to communications@comox-valley-rd.ca. And again, that link is on the website. A newsletter is also being drafted, which will include frequently asked questions and contact information. And this newsletter, along with, Mr. Chair, your bi-monthly update, will be included in the next round of utility bills to be sent out in early May. Second functional area is legislative services, which really comprises a lot of the administration components. On March 17th, all non-active UBID records currently located, which were located at the administration office, at the water treatment plant, and at the Public Works Superintendent's office, were assembled and transported by the CVRD to a secure room at the Comox Valley Aquatic Center for storage. On April 8th, staff from CVRD and myself met at the Aquatic Center to sort out and organize the records and identify those records for destruction. And that would be undertaken after conversion, as well as records for digitization and retention under the CVRD's retention destruction policies. About 71 boxes were reviewed, and the process was overseen and inspected by myself. Subsequent to that March sort, a further 21 boxes of miscellaneous administration and operations documents, as well as 2 filing cabinets, have been organized and sorted. So that was a very meticulous process and quite thorough. UBIT administrative staff, Janice and I and Lindsay, also continue to work through an extensive checklist of to-do items, and I've actually attached that checklist to my report relative to the conversion process, and most particularly in relation to the anticipated permanent closure of the current UBIT office at the end of June, effective the date of conversion. On the human resources side, this is another functional area. CVRD has committed to offering employment to the unionized CUPE unionized staff at UBIT under the terms and conditions of the collective agreement between the CVRD and CUPE. Meetings with all affected staff are in the process of being arranged. In fact, several were held today, and offer letters of employment from the CVRD are anticipated to be sent to UBIT CUPE members during the final week of April. In fact, that has just happened. On the water side of things, another key big functional area. Most recently on April 15th, a team of staff from CVRD Water, accompanied by our Superintendent of Public Works, Dan McGill, conducted a comprehensive tour of the UBIT water supply and distribution system, including Langley Lake, the treatment plant, and key aspects of the distribution network. This is a component of the CVRD's senior operator orientation and familiarization of the UBIT water systems, all in the lead up to the transition of the water function to the CVRD upon conversion. On another matter related to the water service, the CVRD has advised staff that consideration is being given to switching to a quarterly water billing system at some time post-conversion. And the CVRD is reviewing the issues and implications of such a potential move, with more information to be forthcoming shortly. On the fire side of things, discussions between CVR fire and administration staff, the UBIT fire chief, Ian Ham, and the writer, myself, have been initiated in regards to the most appropriate model for the continuation of fire services for Union Bay post-conversion. There still will be a Union Bay Fire Department post-conversion. In addition, discussions are currently underway with CVRD fire and HR staff in regards to the particulars of transition of any UBID paid fire staff and volunteers to the CVRD. So those discussions are also ongoing now. On the finance side of things, another big area, now that the CVRD's budget and financial process, planning process for 2021 is further along, and the UBIT audit and financial statements have been completed. More about that later this evening. The Deputy Administrator Finance Director, Janice, is now actively engaged with CVRD financial and legislative services staff and working through a huge list of budgetary, financial, and logistical details of conversion, particularly as they relate to the transference of budget information, payroll information, and utility billing information and systems, as well as logistical matters surrounding the permanent closure of the UBIT office at the end of June. Street lighting, perhaps one of the more easier areas. The principal staff person overseeing this function, the CVRD, has been in contact with UBIT's Superintendent of Public Works to work through the various technical matters related to the transition of the street lighting function from UBIT to the CVRD. Second section of my report pertains to the strategic priorities, I think all of which you briefly mentioned, Mr. Chair, in your opening remarks. And I just want to give the board a a status update in terms of, and the public, a status update where we are with those. I actually have attached a spreadsheet outlining those strategic priorities, which emerged from a strategic planning session that the board held with myself and other staff back in early January. That spreadsheet is attached to my report. And basically what follows is kind of a short summary of the current status and most recent activities related to these 5 strategic priorities, which were endorsed by the board. And again, I'm happy to answer or attempt to answer questions that the public or trustees may have after the conclusion of my report. Adding B parcels to the tax roll. As I previously reported, we have compiled a list of 108 B parcels. That's been extracted from the district's financial system. The Superintendent of Public Works has reviewed that list and has categorized that list of parcels basically into four kind of groups. Those parcels which appear to be currently connected, those parcels which are considered to be capable of connection but aren't, those parcels which are unable to be connected for whatever reason, and a large group of parcels that are going to require some further research and investigation before a reasonable determination can be made as to whether connection is feasible without further upgrades to the distribution system. We've done a lot of research, and I have consulted with the district solicitor in regards to the legalities, the process, and potential next steps to be taken on whether to add certain B parcels to the taxation roll, the parcel tax roll. I have consulted with the solicitor, particularly in the context of what the district's current policies are and your assessment bylaw, which was passed in 2005, and any obligations and process issues that we'd have to be sensitive to if we move down that road. That legal advice was actually presented in camera to the board today, and I will be rising and reporting, or recommending we rise and report on that issue at the next board meeting after the inaugural. And I certainly see no reason why that legal opinion cannot be put on the open agenda. And between now and then, I'll have further information after further consulting with the solicitor in regards to next steps. So that will be on the agenda of the next regular meeting in May. With respect to the subdivision bylaw, you mentioned that, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the board has made a motion that the CVRD be requested to enact after conversion an amended version of bylaw number 264. Based on some recommended amendments by the UBID solicitor back in 2017. Further discussions regarding this motion were held very recently at the most recent last meeting of the conversion working group. The CVRD has recently responded, and this is kind of new information to the board. The CVRD has responded to those discussions and to the board's motion, which was passed at the last meeting. And the CVRD has responded by indicating that the CVRD does not currently have a subdivision standards bylaw. Having said that, the CVRD does intend to bring forward development standards for drainage and/or environmental impacts to complement its existing regulatory framework for steep slopes, aquatic habitat, and wildlife development permit areas, though that work will progress as time and priorities permit, and that item is on their work plan. The CVRD does rely on language in its water regulation bylaws to direct development, in particular by enabling the CVRD to require that developments meet certain requirements through adhering to the MMCD, and that's Master Municipal Construction Documents for Developments. While the current regulations bylaws do not specifically reference the application of the MMCD standards, the CVRD is advised that they could make such updates to provide clarity. And they've indicated that should the UBID have interest in the regulations bylaws for Union Bay Water Service, making specific reference to MMCD standards, an amendment to those bylaws could be considered following conversion on July 1st, 2021. So I would recommend that the board needs to respond to that last sentence, that should the UBID have interest in the regulations bylaw for Union Bay Water Service, making specific reference to MMCD standards, an amendment to those bylaws could be considered following conversion on July 1st. So unless the board wishes to respond to that this evening, Mr. Chair, I'd propose that at the next regular meeting, we put this item on the agenda under unfinished business for a response back to the CVRD. With respect to the water treatment plant, I'm actually working on, or as of a couple of days ago, working on 3 files related to the water treatment plant. With respect to the proposed separate office, washroom, change room facility, in early April, the Committee of the Whole made a motion that in terms of next steps to be taken on proceeding with this file, staff be requested to pursue a portable, a modular building option for a separate office, washroom, staff room facility at the plant. We'd previously also been looking at a possible build new site build model. But basically, we're now going down the road of a separate office, modular portable option. This motion's been ratified by the board, and input, I've also received recently input from CVRD Occupational Health and Safety in regards to the mandatory and desired specifications for such a building. That was very helpful. And I do anticipate being in a position to proceed with a formal request for written quotations for this project, basically in early May, after all statutory filing requirements related to the AGM have been completed. And I've circulated a draft RFQ to Dan and his team, Dan McGill, just to solicit their input in regards to the desired and mandatory specifications. You better ask the people who are actually going to be working in the facility. Second file I've been working on at the plant is with respect to working with the CVRD to ensure that all matters with respect to the finalization of the building permit process and related files for the water treatment plant have been satisfactorily closed. In late March, the CVRD did advise the writer that all documents were now present and there was no concern from the CVRD. And in fact, a couple of days ago, I got a final sign off, a confirmation from the CVRD that their building file with respect to this matter is now closed and that all required processes and inspections were carried out to their satisfaction. So as far as I'm concerned and the CVRD is concerned, the building permit file on the plant is closed. Finally, the third file I'm working on is with respect to the auditor's observation in the audit findings report for 2020. I'm sure the auditor will mention that tonight. I'm with respect to that observation in regards to the current funding deficiency for this project, which contributes to the district's accumulated deficit and limits resources available to fund other reserve balances. I've commissioned an independent financial consultant to prepare a report which will essentially comprise 3 sections: current situation, including final costs, funding and status of the reserves, observations of the process used to fund the water treatment plant, and finally, options and strategies moving forward. Mr. Clemens, I understand, has spoken to, I believe, all of you at this point in time, or shortly will, and we do anticipate and will be in a position to bring forward that report in May. Third strategic priority, procurement of a new fire apparatus. Development continues. There's a select committee of the board, as you know, on this matter. And they continue to work on the desired specifications, required and desired specifications for a new fire apparatus. So they're continuing work in that regard to basically finalize some recommended specs. Some initial observations have been expressed by the CVRD senior administrative staff and fire staff in regards to the timing for issuance of any requests for proposals for the new piece of apparatus. And the CVRD's indicated that it would be the CVRD's position that the issuance of any RFP for such apparatus be undertaken post-conversion, after conversion. Finally, on the development of a 5-year capital plan, discussions with senior CVRD staff, water and administration continue on the undertaking of a proposed joint CVRD UBID water master planning project to provide greater certainty on the capacity and requirements of the water supply and distribution systems, including the water treatment plant, which would significantly benefit UBID and CVRD post-conversion in developing better asset management and a long-term capital plan. This would be a key piece of information and input to a 5-year or a longer-term capital plan. The water master plan would review source, water main, treatment, storage, transmission, and distribution capacity for a range of growth scenarios and develop recommendations for timing and sizing of upgrades for those scenarios. And I do anticipate bringing forward a further report and information on this matter, certainly before July 1st, before the end of the conversion date, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my report, and I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Gary. Trustees, open for questions, comments with respect to Gary's report. A couple things from me then, Gary, as you were reading the report, it struck me that perhaps the public members on this meeting aren't aware of what an A parcel is and what a B parcel is, and it might be worth a clarification to say, what is it that we're looking at? I can give it, you can give it, whichever we want here.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
So what we're speaking of here is that which parcels of land within UBID are subject to parcel taxes. And our bylaws define that any property that is capable of connecting to the water system and has paid a capital expenditure charge or a CEC, which allows them to connect to the water system, pays a parcel tax of $390 a year. All other parcels of land within the improvement district are then considered B parcels and are charged $0 tax. And it's specified that they are taxable, it's just they're taxed at $0 currently. Our board is looking at, in light of some information from, in the Local Government Act defining how parcel taxes can be charged, that any parcel that can be connected to the water system can be charged a parcel tax. And in light of, the improved quality and costs that go with the water plant, we've been investigating whether it would be appropriate to amend our bylaws to allow properties which can connect to the water system to be considered A parcels, therefore subject to the $390 parcel tax. Gary, do you want to clarify that any further, or does that sound about right?
That's a good explanation, and just to segue off that, that's the issue that we're looking at now, and we're seeking advice from the solicitor in regards to, I wouldn't say the legalities, but more the statutory processes to affect that conversion of, B parcels into A parcels and to make them taxable. There's certain statutory requirements, timelines, processes that have to be adhered to. We have a bylaw. A bylaw may require an amendment. The board has given some direction in regards to an amendment. Obviously subject to obtaining the appropriate advice, and that's what we're working on now. And I hope to be in a position to basically rise and report at the next board meeting and provide direction in regards to the course moving forward.
Thank you. The second comment I had was, as you discussed the procurement of new fire apparatus, it struck me that we no longer have a chair of that select committee, given the expiry of Trustee Harrelson's term. And therefore, that should probably be on our next board meeting to decide what we do about that.
Actually, Mr. Chair, the inaugural meeting, of course, is 1 week today. And that's a standing item on your inaugural agenda, is to make appointments to various select committees. So it's actually, I've done the agenda in draft. So that's one of the items, is to
Perfect.
review the composition of that select committee.
Good, thank you. Okay, so no further questions. Any further questions for Gary? Okay, let's move through then into the next report, which would be our Public Works Superintendent, Dan McGill. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, everybody. For the Public Works report, I could just read it if that would be okay. Or if there's questions now, or how would you like me to do that, Ian?
I would suggest that you present it in the way that's most comfortable to you, and then we'll open it up for questions afterwards.
Okay, well, I'll just read through it. The Union Bay Water Distribution System went through a total of 199,690 cubic meters of water in 2020. Our minimum daily recorded volume was 309 cubic meters on January 27th, and our maximum was 1,331 cubic meters on July 20th. We're using 24% of our total license from Langley Lake at 809,000 plus cubic meters per year. The water distribution system is constantly sampled for turbidity, pH, temperature, and chlorine 24/7 from our online analyzers. There are daily chlorine residual tests done throughout the water distribution system. Ministry of Health water samples for coliforms are taken from raw water and the distribution system 3 days a week. All of the samples from the distribution system were negative in 2020, sent by VHA to their lab. Water test results are posted on the Union Bay Improvement District website. In 2020, there were 5 new service connections added to the system for a total of 679 residential connections. These are 3/4 inch and 1 inch services that are hot tapped into the main line and trenched to the property line where they are metered. There are also 18 commercial properties that pay a flat rate for the water at $1.60 per cubic meter for a total of 697 connections. There are 4 more water leak repairs in the district in 2020, up to 21 for last year. Some very large leaks require excavators, back trucks, dump trucks, and flaggers. The pipe failures are to blame from poor construction methods 50+ years ago when installed, and some inexpensive materials used. We are seeing the number of leaks increase over the years, and pipe replacement plan will be required to address the aging infrastructure. The leaks come from asbestos cement pipe failure, corporation stops, service line splits, holes in the main lines, failing copper, poly, and PVC pipes, and also gasketed pipe failures. Langley Lake's water level did really well last year, staying on level 1 water restrictions and only going down 34 centimeters below the spillway on September 11th. The rains came in October and quickly saturated the forest and filled the lake by October 14th. This raised the raw water turbidity to 4.5 NTU, but as we had our water treatment plant operational, there was no boil advisory for the winter of 2020. The turbidity slowly dropped over the winter down to 2.0 NTU as of April of 2021. The water treatment plant went 100% online May 15th, 2020, and was able to remove us from the boil advisory on May 27th, 2020, and produce water at 0.03 NTU to our customers, and is also pH balanced. The water from the new reservoir at 1,750 cubic meters supplies water at a higher pressure for the customers above 4th Street that were in a lower pressure zone. The 2 new pressure reducing valves keep a constant pressure, the same as it was before, for the houses in the high pressure zone. I would recommend having a look at our website There's lots of great pictures on there, and it's kind of neat to see the whole plant take shape. There's a total of 13 streetlight repairs from 2020 throughout the entire community. It was very helpful when they're reported, as the public works staff is not usually working at night. A pole ID number or a physical address is helpful when reporting a streetlight failure. BC Hydro is working this year to replace old high pressure sodium bulbs to new LED light for cost savings and improved lighting. As we're moving into a new era with the transfer to CBRD and this being the last AGM for UBID, I would like to thank all the staff for their help over the years. I started in April of 1999, just after my second daughter was born, and working here has given my family a great place to call home, live, and work for the last 20+ years. I'd like to give a special thank you to Gloria Royer and Keith McKay for their decades of work that they've given to the community. I hope the transition will be a benefit for Union Bay and the great community it is. I've also attached to my report a little more detailed version that I think went out in our newsletter about the whole water system and treatment plant. So it'd be, I don't think I want to get into that, but that concludes my report.
Dan, thank you so much. And I'd like to reiterate my thanks for the great work that you've always done, and specifically over the last year in bringing this water treatment plant online and then stabilizing it, because I know that, you know, every new thing has its warts, and that it's taken a lot of work on your behalf to stabilize this and give us the great water that we're all enjoying now. So thank you to everybody on your team.
Thank you.
Trustees, any questions? I'll take silence as a no. So thank you. Oh, I think I said that while I was muted. Let's move on now to Chief Ham and the fire and rescue report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Rowe. I think I'll just touch on some of the, highlights of the report. I won't read the whole thing. It's a little bit lengthy, so I'll just touch on the messages, the executive summary, and the acknowledgements, if that's okay. I'm very proud to present the Union Bay Fire Rescue 2020 annual report. The annual report provides a welcomed opportunity to formally acknowledge the outstanding work of our volunteer department. More than ever, the pandemic challenges of 2020 have highlighted the incredible dedication of the Union Bay Fire Rescue membership. This report serves to document the commitment of our membership as they have persevered through the numerous COVID-19 operational adaptations in order to continue to provide care and service to the Union Bay community. Moreover, our firefighters are trained as emergency medical responders who are often called to provide initial support and stabilization prior to ambulance services arrival. With the pandemic, our members were suddenly placed in a higher risk of coronavirus infection. In my opinion, firefighters have not been commonly counted among the ranks of the frontline workers and are deserving of acknowledgement for their critical service. In like manner, the department has also supported our community in other ways. They have fed people through food drives and offered social support through drive-by events. The emotional toll of this pandemic has weighed heavily on us all, yet the Union Bay Fire Rescue Service members have gone beyond their own family concerns and continue to volunteer services in support of others. In closing, I have been heartstruck witnessing the unprecedented level of generosity, care, and compassion. I am honored to work alongside each and every member of the Union Bay Fire Rescue. That was my opening message in my report. I'll touch on some of the 2020 executive summary points. Already spoken to was the replacement of engine 25 and the RFP process for that. Union Bay Fire Rescue, in conjunction with the Union Bay Improvement District Acting CAO, Union Bay Improvement District Board of Trustees, and community representation, continue to work towards the purchase of a replacement engine. At this time, the key stakeholders are focused on determining the engine and equipment requirements through consultation with other departments, manufacturers, and fire department members. And currently, we're still collecting information from our members. We've had some demonstrations or presentations, pardon me, by Hub Fire and Fort Garry, which were very informative and helpful. Union Bay Fire Rescue continues to maintain mutual aid agreements with Fanny Bay, Comox, Cumberland, Courtney, Hornby Island, Denman Island, Oyster River, 19 Wing, and Campbell River. Beyond enhanced emergency response, this working relationship promotes operational consistency, identifies changes in current industry standards, best practices, and legislation. Last year, we completed our first year, our inaugural year of our paid for call and practice, and that went over quite well, and we thank the community for its commitment to the fire department. Union Bay Fire Rescue responded to numerous incidents for fire, medical, motor vehicle incidents, and hazardous materials, logging in the area of 5,911 member hours on calls. And under my future considerations, we have COVID. The effects and implications of COVID-19 will continue into 2021. Union Bay Fire Rescue will need to continue to stay vigilant in updating department operations to be in line with changing public health orders. This is no small task given the broad-reaching response implications such as monitoring sufficiency of personal protective equipment, unified crisis communication plans, effective training strategies that incorporate safety protocols, problem-solving social distancing guidelines for various incident environments, etc. Again, as mentioned earlier in other reports, at the direction of the Union Bay Improvement District CAO, the Union Bay Improvement District Conversion Working Group, and Union Bay Fire Rescue will be planning for the delivery of fire services as part of the Comox Valley Regional District. Union Bay Fire Rescue is also committed to the planning for the development of a new fire hall. This has been identified as a priority given service needs and requirements to appropriately house fire apparatus. And we continue to recruit and work on the retention of our members. And it is always challenging in a volunteer fire department. However, we are currently running with 22 members, which is quite awesome. And I'm going to skip through my report through the members' pictures and training and whatnot and get to some acknowledgements. This report would not be complete without giving opportunity and acknowledge the numerous individuals who have collectively worked to make Union Bay Fire Rescue an amazing department. I would like to take the time to acknowledge, celebrate, and thank our firefighters for their service they have provided to our community. Special honors to the following members' achievements. Firefighter of the Year for 2020 was Captain Darcy Rainey. The Rookie of the Year for 2020 was James Hargreaves. 10 years of service went to Rob Hollins. 15 years of service to Captain Darcy Rainey and Susan Hargraves. And unprecedented, like a nice successful milestone of 25 years of service went to Deputy Chief Kevin McGregor. I would also like to acknowledge the families of our membership as without their support, the department would not thrive. A special thank you to my Deputy Chief, Kevin McGregor, who so diligently performs numerous activities behind the scenes. Thank you to my training officer, Captain Darcy Rainey, for his creative work in keeping us moving forward during the challenges of the pandemic year. And thank you to the Union Bay Firefighter Association, Travis Meffam, Alexis Royer, and Susan Hargreaves. Your level of collaboration has made this another outstanding year for our department. And a big thank you to Janice Swanson, the Union Bay Improvement District Deputy Administrator. Janice has provided invaluable guidance and support to the department this year while seamlessly juggling numerous other responsibilities. Similarly, I would like to thank the Union Bay Board of Trustees for their time, interest, support, and resulting excellent working relationship. To conclude, I would like to extend my deep appreciation to the community of Union Bay, where I am so privileged to live and work. To you, thank you to the taxpayers for your ongoing support of the fire department. Respectively submitted, Ian Ham, Fire Chief.
Thank you, Chief Ham. And I would also like to reiterate my thanks to your entire team and to you for service over the past year in a particularly difficult time. We acknowledge that the pandemic has been particularly hard on the fire service, and I have admired your calm and professional leadership throughout. So thank you to you, and thank you to your team.
And thank you very much.
Any questions from trustees for Chief Ham? Thank you then, Chief Ham, and we will move on to the presentation of our consolidated financial statements for the year by Graham Roberts of Myers Norris Penny, our auditors. Thank you, Graham.
Just setting things up here. So I'm sharing my screen here. I think it's just easier people looking at the numbers as I'm talking about them. So yeah, we'll just jump straight into our audit report. So it's a clean audit report. So in our opinion, the company consolidated financial statements present fairly in all material respects the consolidated financial position. So that's the balance sheet, the balances at December 31st, and the yearly operations and consolidated cash flows, and it's all done in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting. So it's a clean audit report, which is always good. So I'm actually going to jump around a bit. I'm going to start with the consolidated statement of operations. So the current year, or the year 2020, is the middle column. The column on the left is the budget, and the comparison is last year's numbers. So you can see due to the water treatment coming on board, there was a change in the rate structures. And so you can see, well, not so much fire protection, but those rates did go up as reserves are being built up for future expenditures there. But you can see water tools have gone up substantially, but they're less than budgeted. I think when we went through the budget process for developing the budget for 2021, we found a issue with how the things were calculated last year. That's why it's less than budget, not because consumption was down significantly. Parcel tax, so that was a budgeted item again to help pay for the new water treatment plant. Everything else is pretty similar there, except for other income. So other income, so there's some up charges that were done as part of the water treatment plant, and so $94,000 of that was paid. So when the water treatment plant was completed, that was brought into income. So that is what makes up the majority of other income. So you can see in total, the revenue is down than previous year, but that's because last year there's a land that was sold for a gain. So overall revenue is quite similar actually to the actual budget amount. On the expenditure side, big change in amortization. So the water treatment plant came in into service in May. So we recorded 7 of 12 months amortization on it. So that's the big increase in the amortization. It's a non-cash item. You can also see other changes there is interest and long-term debt. So in 2019, there's a construction loan on the water treatment plant. And when the plant was being built, those interest charges were capitalized as part of the water treatment plant. But again, in May, once it comes online, it becomes an expense. So that's why we start seeing the expense there. Other changes of note, there is repairs and maintenance of $117,000. That's up from last year, but 25,000 of that increase is for miscellaneous fire equipment, safety gear, and some hoses in there that were been charged to reserve. So it shows up as an expense here, but it's been funded out of reserves. Utilities are up. New water treatment plant uses more electricity, and wages and benefits. Additional employees were brought on. Wage change for the fire department, and also the union contracts caused most of the increases in wages there. So you can see results for the year ends up in a deficit for the current year of $47,634. So you can see the accumulated surplus. I'll go through what makes up the accumulated surplus is just under $8 million. I'll go through that in a little bit. Let's see, statement of operations. So I'm just going to jump back into the balance sheet, put the value of things at December 31st. So these are historical costs. So you can see the tangible capital assets down there at the bottom, just under $9 million. That's the accumulated book cost of it. It's not present valued or fair valued of anyways. So you can see cash and investments. If you lump those two together, it's actually increased $124,000 from the prior year. So that's good. Accounts receivable, that's gone down, and that's a combination of last year. There's a fair amount of GST rebate on the water treatment plant during the construction phase. So that was not the situation for the current year. So that was a reduction in the GST, and also better collections in the water tolls and parcel taxes. The totals of those amounts have gone down $40,000, which is good because those values were creeping up. So it's a good recovery for the district. So you can see your financial assets just under $3 million. So actually very similar to the prior year. Financial liabilities, big decrease in accounts payable. And again, that relates to the water treatment plant. It was an active construction project December of last year. So you had lots of payables for that at December 31st. Deferred revenue, big change there is that $94,000 that was brought into revenue on completion of the water treatment plant. And a construction loan. So at December 31st, that was still a construction loan. It hadn't been converted into a conventional mortgage yet. So it was just under $3.5 million that was drawn on that. So because of the construction draws, you go from a net financial position to a net debt position, and not just for the borrowing related to the water treatment plant. Okay, so I'll go through the notes when we look at the accumulated surplus. I think that's a good place to go there. So this is just the flows of the ins and the outs to how we calculate the net financial assets or debt. And this is a cash flow statement, and you can see actually the operations were used by the district was a negative, a draw, and that's just because we had large payables last year that were paid in the current year for work that was done in the prior year. So that's why we have a operating deficit on a cash flow basis. But then the offset is obviously the construction draws exceed that. So you do have positive cash flow for the year. So we jump into the notes. Oops, wrong way. So this amortization policy. So water treatment plants being amortized its own separate asset, and that's been done for 25 years. Accounts receivable talked about that a bit. So you can see that the trade payables and the water tolls and parcel tax have gone down. See the accounts payable as well. Capital assets, you can see I'll go through, there's another schedule at the back. We'll go through that in a little more detail. Here's the accumulated surplus, the total, so just under $8 million. But a big chunk of this, $5.4 million of that is in your tangible assets. It's not cash readily available to use. So your operating surplus is actually in a deficit position. It's an improvement from last year. The reason for being 500,000 in the hole last year and only 35,000 in the hole this year is a timing issue in regards to when the water treatment plant costs were incurred versus when the mortgage was taken out. That's why there's a recovery there of that degree. And we'll go through these reserve balances in a little bit as well, a little more detailed schedule at the back. Note 12, there is a commitment, this was here last year, in regards to the decommissioning of the old plant as part of the original agreement. Significant event notes, this is the COVID issue, which we're all aware of, and also the conversion note as well, converting to the regional district on July 1st. So this is a little more detail on the capital assets. You can see the water treatment plant has been created as its own separate thing. Before it was a part of water work system. So we just transferred the amount that was there historically and put it into its own separate account just to keep track of it separately. So you can see the total cost of the water treatment was just under $5.4 million. You can also see that's where the biggest increase in amortization is right there. It's $143,000. And so here's a little more detail on the reserve. So that $25,000 I said that was being funded on those repairs and maintenance. That's those equipment purchases were on that line item. So that's just the funding for it. And this is a sort of breaking down the different fund balances of what's available for future use. So you can see working from left to right, the fire restricted renewal is increased in value. So it's a $1,579,000 in reserve available for fire renewal purchases. And the water restricted water, that's now at $548,000. Then your capital expenditure charge reserve is now at almost $318,000, and some other operational reserves. So there's a sort of general reserve, $129,000, no change there. And then there's a little bit of funding that was also used from the fire capital for some of the small capital purchases as well. The big thing here to note is you can see typically acquisition of tangible capital assets. If it's being funded on operations, it'd be a negative, and for the operating fund, and a positive for the capital fund. This is just relating again to the timing of when the mortgage was drawn versus payments were made. So that's why you can see the big change there. So that's the financial statements. So I'll just bring the audit findings over as well. So just a couple things that was pointed out previously. Well, this materiality that was used was $50,000. We used to use it as a percentage of revenue. So revenues are up. The excluding the gain on sale last year. That's why the materiality went up a little bit. Going concern, just, you know, the district is being amalgamated into the regional district on July 1st, but we're still using the going concern consumption because all assets, liabilities, and operations are being transferred over. Things aren't being liquidated. Then the piece here that was brought up by an administrator, just talking about the water treatment plant, just going through the funding, which has already been talked about. So the amount that's been funded out of operations is the difference between the costs and how much we've allocated to it. So it's 1.1. And that's sort of put the district has created the deficit in the operating fund because of there wasn't $1.1 million of surplus available to fund this project. So there is a small deficit in there. The deficit isn't as bad as I was actually anticipating. And I think part of that is just due to time again for the mortgage wasn't rolled over in the current year. So that we didn't have to cover those principal payments over it. So it reduced that deficit or reduce the operating funds or increase operating funds revenue. So the ending deficit of the $35,000 is not as bad as I anticipated. So that's a good thing. Just sort of here, just some adjustments we made, some ones that we didn't, and then just sort of just confirming our independence to the board in order for us to give our independent audit opinion. So that is my report, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Graham. I know that there's a lot of information in there and it comes down, it's hard to get it all across in a short period of time. So thanks for doing your best with that. Trustees, any questions for Graham? Okay. So that concludes the presentation of reports. And so now we can move on to the new business section of the agenda, which starts with motions to approve the annual general meeting staff reports, which I presume also includes my report. So we can do them one at a time. So I would say first motion to approve the chair's report.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. The interim administrator's report, motion to approve the interim administrator's report.
So moved.
Seconder,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
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 Public Works Superintendent report from Dan McGill, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Fire Chief's report presented by Chief Ham, motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And finally, the consolidated motion to approve the auditor's report as presented by Graham.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that takes care of all of the reports that we just went through. And so the next item of agenda is a motion to approve 2021 trustee remuneration at the same level as 2020. Can I have a motion? Or the motion's on the
So
floor. Can I have a
moved.
seconder?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'll take silence as no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, and finally, a motion to set the date for the inaugural meeting of the new board at Thursday, May 6th, 2021 at 2:30 p.m. The meeting to be conducted virtually via Zoom. Motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Well, that concludes the formal part of our agenda. So I'd like to move to landowner questions. How would we like to do this? Janice, I guess you're probably in control of mute buttons and those sorts of things. Do you want people to just, shall we just let people start talking or what? Okay, so I will try to see who speaks first, and I will call your name and ask others to hold their question, and I'll try to get to you right next. Who has a question? Am I presuming there are no landowner questions?
Ian, you might need to prompt people to unmute themselves.
Like Susanna said.
What? No questions?
Wow.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I'm glad that we're converting to the regional district. Very happy because what we've had is just been unacceptable, not including you guys, but the people before you. And that means Ted as well. Like we were not treated properly. And
Hey, let's, Mary, I appreciate it, but I'd rather.
well,
this not
anyways,
be a
that's all I'm going to
condemnation
say.
of
That's all
others.
I'm going to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Well, if not, then I guess we just need to say thank you to everybody for your participation. I appreciate, like, one more time, I appreciate all of you so much, all of the staff so much, and we appreciate the support the landowners have shown over the last year and the patience with all of the changes that this pandemic has required. So with that, I would ask the trustees somebody to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Eve. And thank you, Gary. And all of the staff, Union Bay Improvement District. Job well done.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good evening.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
guys. Have a good night.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.